Wow.
The siding, it didn't hurt.
Really?
And it took every tree.
Took every tree.
Yep, this little one went down first, it broke off, and I was watching, and that great big spruce tree,
Yeah?
just went down and took it by the roots and everything right on the ground.
Really? Way to get home. On the train.
All right. It was just a little,
You're all right. You're good.
a little twig.
Oh, look at there. Where'd that come from? Oh, it must have been something, a shed or something.
I think someone's shed got
Jeez.
just destroyed. Yeah, here's the rest of that shed. Right on the ground. That's what it is, right there.
It must be the city. There must be.
Oh, they're trying to clear out that road. Look at this ballpark damaged.
Jeez.
This is where we came from.
Oh, look at there.
Oh my.
My God, you imagine that? Oh, that really came through here, didn't it?
Oh wow. I've never seen anything like that before.
Jeez.
This is.
I feel sorry for everybody.
Everyone in the family is safe. No one was hurt during the storm yesterday. A giant storm blew through a lot of the Midwest, but it hit particularly hard in eastern Iowa and I guess central Iowa. Still not that certain of all the geography around here, but an area where it's a little bit further away from here, but where some of our family lives, a lot of my in-laws. And so yesterday during the day, I had seen all the weather reports, and even on the live stream, I was kind of like joking about how like everyone was like kind of freaking out. The weather team on the local news has been broadcasting nonstop for like the last 3 hours. They're like getting a little bit loopy and exhausted. We're okay here. We haven't had anything too bad. We had some really dark skies and some very hard rains for a little bit. Now it's just kind of like rainy and still dark. Some of the local like TV channels went out. Like not our TV, our like satellite TV was still working for the most part, but like some of the channels were out, and they're still out this morning today. Because the storms were pretty severe. The wind gusts were, or the wind speeds were in, like some of them had recorded wind speeds of like up to 100 miles an hour. And I just have never experienced anything like that. We didn't get that here. It was windy, but nothing like that. And, you know, a lot of phone lines were down, and even like cell phones like weren't working. And so we tried to call and text my brother-in-law and his girlfriend. but we weren't able to get through. She was able to get like intermittent signal, and at one point she had like posted a very short like message on her to Facebook, and then we tried to communicate with my niece, who her phone is like I think is like a track phone, and because she's very, very young. I think this is her first cell phone, and we've been communicating. We were able to communicate with her through like the kids' Facebook Messenger app. So like we were like getting my daughter's iPad, and we were like, hey, go text your niece and see if they're okay. And so we found out that everyone was fine, but we had heard that some trees had fallen on their house, and like just crushed a car. And so we went down there. My father-in-law first went over to talk to the uncles down in Guttenberg, got a chainsaw, and then we kind of like loaded up the truck with like things we thought we would need. We didn't know what we would need other than a chainsaw, or if the chainsaw would even be, you know, helpful at all, because depending on how a tree falls on a house, there might not be anything that, you know, like regular people can do in terms of, you know, versus like a professional tree removing service, that kind of thing. But we went down there, and at first it was kind of like, oh, things aren't bad around here. Then as we started getting closer, we would start to see like a couple of trees down, and it was kind of like exciting at first to be like, oh, look at that. Hey, whoa, look at how the wind took that down. Then we started seeing some of like the semi trucks and their trailers like tipped over. We saw grain bins, silos, grain bins. They're the giant round like aluminum or metal. I think it's probably steel, metal. Those round things that you see at farms, and you would see one on the side of the highway, and it would just be crumpled. And you would look around and see like, I don't see like what farm that would have come from, which tells me that like the wind picked it up and like threw it, you know, like hundreds of yards from where it originally came. And other times we would see like real giant of those grain bins, like, you know, sometimes there's like 2 or 3 in a row, and it looked like a giant just came through and like punched them on top. And so that was like really just overwhelming to see. I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. And then as we started getting closer into town where my brother-in-law lives, that's when things started getting like really intense. We had heard already that from some of our other relatives that had tried to go and help some of our other relatives that are in the area, that some of the roads were either blocked off or they weren't letting cars through. And so my mother-in-law used to work in that area, and so she knew kind of like a back way to get around, and even that was pretty hairy. There were times where I mean, there was only a very narrow pathway that a truck or a car could get through, and sometimes like the branches would be like scraping up against the truck, and other times where like I was just like, I don't know how we're gonna get through that. And I was like, do I need to get out to like help direct the truck through this narrow like way? I didn't ever have to end up doing that, but there was a point where like we're like, how do we? There's a tree blocking the entire road. How do we get through? And then all of a sudden we see like this little Cadillac coming like out of the side and like coming and it made it around the tree, driving through what was really, really wet grass and very muddy and a little bit of it on an embankment. And then the guy in the Cadillac like rolls down his window, and he's a younger guy, and he was like the nicest guy, and he's like, hey, make sure you put it in all fours. And my mother-in-law was like, you think we can make it through it? And he's like, oh yeah, I just came through with this Cadillac. And he's like, you know, patting his car. I just came through with this Cadillac. You'll be fine. Because it was like a big 4-door Cadillac sedan. He's like, you'll be fine. Just make sure you go slow and make sure you got it in 4-wheel drive. And so we did that. And he's like, there's a second one, not this tree, but the tree behind that. That's when it's going to get really, what was it? I want to say hairy, but I forget what word he used. He's like, it's going to be really wet, really slippery, but you'll be fine. He's like, just take it slow and you'll be okay. And so we're like, okay. So it was super nice for him to kind of like give us that tip. And then as we were driving through, I saw that he stopped at every other car that was behind us to tell him kind of the same thing. So that was really nice. But like some of those neighborhoods, like the trees are all down, and people like were trying to like, you could see like there were cars that were stopped as people were trying to like get back home, because this happened in the middle of the day. A lot of people were at work. So people were trying to get back home, but they couldn't because there was just not a tree, but trees blocking the way between like the driveway and like the house. It essentially, and as we got closer, it got like there was just more and more of it. We'd go on, turn from one road to another. You would see giant like this highway signs that would just look like they were bent and pushed over because the wind had just like, it just like someone had flattened it. Like if you took like a birthday cake candle and just like smushed it like sideways into a cake, that's kind of what all the signs looked like. So it was really weird to see all that. A lot of places had no power, so like, you know, all the gas stations were closed because they didn't have any power to operate. Power lines were down everywhere, like the telephone poles that carry the power. So that, I don't know why they don't call them power line poles, but the telephone poles were like bent down, and sometimes you would see 3, 4, or 5 of them in a row that were just tipped over. And then like the power line, you know, those like metal scaffolding giant power line things, there were 3 or 4 of those in town that were just crumpled over as well. And so yeah, nothing in the area had power. People were driving over power lines, under power lines. So we got eventually to my brother-in-law and his girlfriend's house, and we didn't really know like what to kind of expect. But we parked the truck in the driveway, and then, I mean, the main thing that we could do, there was a giant tree in the neighbor's yard that had tipped over, and it had like these 3 main, like, I don't want to say branches, but 3 main segments. One of them is kind of still standing. One of them tipped this way and is leaning now on like the front corner of the house, and another segment came this way and crushed one of their cars and is leaning on the other part of the roof of their house. And so there was nothing we could do about this big segment here because it was just way too high up, and I don't know what we could do. And then, but we did do something about the part that was on the car. I mean, the car is going to have to be totaled. Like the tree just demolished it from the roof, is smashed in, the back windshield smashed out, and like the axle, like the car is sitting on the ground on the left back rear side. But also that tree had come through and is blocking the one garage spot that they have in the house for the car that is working, and also the entire driveway. So we got to work. My father-in-law and then my brother-in-law used the chainsaw. They very smartly didn't let me anywhere near a chainsaw because I wouldn't even know how to use that thing. But they started getting to work to like cutting that down where they could. The one thing that really scared me at first is that like the main electric line to like their power meter thing on the house was like taken down from that tree, but like there's no power anywhere, so none of the lines were live. But it's still just kind of terrifying to be touching those things. But we tried to like move everything they could. The only thing, I mean, for the whole ride down there, I'm like, I don't know what good I'm going to be. Maybe moral support, cheering everybody on. But you know, there were so many branches, and ended up, and then like once the branches were cleared, then logs and just debris. I just tried to make it sure that it was clear for everyone else that kind of was like doing more of the main work, to have like a clean, clear area to work. So that's kind of what I was doing. And yeah, I mean, it just seemed like we were doing a lot of work, but in the big scheme of things, like everywhere in the neighborhood, trees were down. This was like the only main tree blocking this alley, but in the alley like across the street, there was another giant tree just blocking the entire way. All sorts of power lines were down all over the place. Cars, as they went by, had to like slow down because like some of the cars are taller, and so like they wanted to make sure they could get through it. So it was a weird experience. Like in the background, in the noise, you could always hear like someone else's chainsaw going, and it was weird. There was like people like working, like we were trying to do some work and trying to like do something, but then other people were just kind of like walking down the neighborhood and like taking it all in. Like I just don't think people knew what to do. I wouldn't have known what to do in that kind of situation if that was my house. I would have just felt so helpless. But you know, all I could think of doing was like, look, they just cut off some more branches from the tree. Let's move some more branches of the tree and move it to the big pile. Like that's like the only thing that I could really think of to do to try and help and kind of like process the whole thing. Eventually we got a lot of the branches down. We were able to clear a space for them to get out of their garage and for cars to get through the alley. But at a certain point we had to stop because the tree was kind of resting on the car slash house. And like the one last like part of that tree that they cut, you know, we were all careful and everyone was like standing back. And as my brother-in-law finally cut through it, like the whole thing, you know, several hundred pounds of tree just like shifted down a little bit, and like my heart skipped a beat for sure, because it was just like, what's going to happen? And we stopped there because I felt like if we tried to get any more, like if we tried to like completely clear it from the car, the big part of that tree would have come down further, and part of it was like resting like up on the roof, and so I felt like it would have just like pulled down the roof if we had cut more from it, or if it moved any further. So we all just kind of left it at that point. It was enough to kind of get through the day, I guess, and so we kind of left it there. But my understanding is, and I haven't heard any updates yet this morning, but power's out in the area, and it's going to take anywhere between 5 and 10 days before power gets back. And with the damage to the roof, water has already leaked into the house, and so they're very concerned about that. Hopefully, like insurance adjusters will come out, but who knows how quickly people, like the people that could actually fix and resolve those things, like picking a tree up off a house and fixing a roof, will be able to actually get in there to work. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. We're trying to figure that out with them, and help them any way that we can. The thing is, they're both teachers, and so like they're getting ready to try and figure out school, and that was been like a huge stressful thing for them already, as it's been for many people and other teachers and parents across the country. But so they're like, they have so much work to do right now, and then all this happens, so they're pretty stressed out. And you know, my mother-in-law was having a hard time with it, because this family is a bunch of huggers, and like that's like the one thing like we can't really do. You know, we all had masks as we were working, so yeah, it's just hard. Like it's such a pretty, I'd never actually seen their house before, but it's such a pretty neighborhood, charming neighborhood with beautiful trees, or did have beautiful trees, and beautiful old houses. And like every house, no, I don't think any house was spared. Some houses are hurt more than others, but it looked to me basically like someone had gone in and taken, like, I don't know about how powerful a stick of dynamite is, but as a euphemism, I'll use a stick of dynamite. But it looks like someone had taken basically a stick of dynamite and put it inside, like dug one, or like put one in every single tree in the entire area and set them all off at once, because every tree just looked like it had exploded from like basically like the middle, and like it had just, and branches and trees were just falling and tipping over, you know, in all sorts of haphazard directions. And it's just, I mean, I've lived through hurricanes before, and you know, I lived in St. Louis for a while, and we've had tornado warnings and really high winds and lots of hail damage and like different storms like that, but I just don't think I've ever seen anything like this, at least not in my recent memory. I think Chicago got hit pretty hard with it too, but you know, where we live in Chicago, I just feel like by the time a storm of that kind of magnitude gets to where we are, we're closer to the lake. It has a lot of like city and other like buildings and obstacles to get through before it gets to us, and so like it's just something I mean, we've been living there for over a dozen years, and so it's just something that I haven't personally seen in a real long time, and it was still kind of processing it, you know, visually in terms of everything that kind of went on. So I'm just glad everyone's okay, but now we're going to try and figure out how we can help them the best. You know, I was like texting my wife on the way home, like, hey, what does a generator cost? Can a regular person buy a generator? Like, can you like search that? Because they don't have one, and I don't know if like that's going to help or what. And then we're also trying to think of if there's any like hotels we can help them get into. Because I mean, I think they wanted to stay in their house yesterday, but like, you know, they got work they got to do. If they don't have power, they don't have internet, and so like they got to do some work. So we got to get that figured out for them. So hopefully we'll figure something out. But it's just there's still a lot left to do, even though like the debris, at least the debris that we can clear so far, has been cleared. But I think we're going back today. We're gonna bring them some more food and just other stuff. I mean, they can always go out and get those things, but you know, just trying to help out and do what we can. So normally today's video was going to be about the Hoka Clifton 7, so I thought I would bump it till tomorrow, just to kind of talk to you guys about kind of like is going on around here. We're fine here. We didn't have any damage to the house, but not far from here, in a lot of part of Iowa, they got hit pretty hard. So the Hoka video will be tomorrow. Thank you for your patience, but just letting you guys know, if you're the type that prayers for the area would be really appreciated. I think they could really use it. So that's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.